All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into something that you use every single day,
Yeah.
but probably don't overthink, and that is conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a prevention specialist, yeah, community engagement is key, right?
Absolutely.
But what we're unpacking today is how crucial good conversation is to getting diverse input
Right.
and really understanding what a community needs.
I think it's fascinating how often we treat conversation as just, simple chit chat.
Right.
But these sources, from facilitation experts to thought leaders, remind us it's much, much deeper than that.
Yeah.
Margaret Wheatley, for example.
Yeah.
She argues conversation isn't just casual, it's how humans have always made sense of the world together.
That's really interesting. Like, it flips the script on how some people view meetings, you know?
Totally.
Instead of complaining that talking is inefficient, these sources say it's the most natural way to problem solve.
Yeah.
Even more so than rigid procedures. I mean, because we're not just looking for the right answer,
That's right.
but a shared understanding that works for everyone.
Precisely. And when it comes to tackling something as complex as substance misuse,
Right.
those multiple perspectives are invaluable. You simply can't get the full picture
Right.
if you're only hearing from a select few.
And that brings us to Adam Kahane. So he's got this idea of transformative facilitation.
Yeah.
And he distinguishes between vertical and horizontal approaches.
Mm-hmm.
So vertical is like looking at the whole group and moving towards like one goal. But horizontal zooms in on each person.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's voice gets equal weight.
And what Kahane highlights is you need both.
Right.
It's like tacking a sailboat against the wind.
Interesting.
You shift back and forth
Okay.
to make progress. In community engagement, that means, you can't just bulldoze ahead
Right.
with one agenda.
Yeah.
You need to also pause.
Right. And truly hear
Yeah.
what individual people are experiencing.
So if leading good conversations is so important, what makes a good facilitator?
Well, Kahane says it's less about being the one in charge and more about removing the things
Yeah.
that stop people from talking honestly. He even quotes his mentor,
Oh, wow.
who said, everybody, even the most simple person, can tell if you're trying to manipulate them.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's powerful.
It is. It's a powerful reminder that people are smart.
Yeah.
They can sense
Right.
when someone's trying to control the conversation, and that shuts them down. Think about it. When have you felt
Yeah.
most comfortable sharing your honest opinion? Likely when you felt truly listened to,
Absolutely.
not like someone was, steering you to their conclusion.
Yeah. And that really resonates, especially for this work, right?
Yeah.
If you want to understand substance misuse in a community, you can't just tell people what you think the issues are.
Absolutely not. No, you have to.
You have to create space for them
Yes,
to speak freely so they feel empowered to share their own experiences.
exactly. And that's where the idea of microstructures comes in.
Okay, yeah.
These are subtle techniques you can weave into conversations
Okay.
to make them more intentional.
Okay.
Like little nudges to
Right.
keep things flowing, to make sure everyone gets a chance to contribute and to build on each other's ideas.
I like that. Now, the sources actually give a really clear example called the 1-2-4 all. It's like a step-by-step guide.
Mm-hmm.
First, everyone thinks on their own for a bit.
Right.
Then they pair up to discuss.
Yep.
Then those pairs join to make groups of 4.
Exactly.
And finally, the whole group comes together.
What's brilliant about that
Yeah.
is that it gets even the quietest people involved
Oh, interesting.
early on.
Okay.
Instead of one person dominating,
Right.
everyone has time to process
Okay.
and contribute.
At their own pace. It's particularly relevant for sensitive topics,
Yeah.
like substance misuse,
Right.
where people might hesitate to speak up
Yeah.
in a large group setting.
I can see that being so useful.
It is.
Like, imagine facilitating a community discussion on opioid prevention.
Mhm.
You could use 1-2-4 all to start with individual reflection.
Yeah.
Maybe what people have observed in their own lives.
Exactly.
Then in pairs, they share experiences,
Right.
building towards groups, discussing local resources.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to the full group,
Mm-hmm.
you've already got a rich base of shared understanding.
It's a structured way
Yeah.
to make sure the conversation isn't just dominated by the loudest voices or preconceived notions.
Oh, I see.
You're literally building understanding
Yeah.
from the ground up,
Right.
which is crucial when you're trying to get to the heart of a complex issue like substance misuse.
Okay, so we've talked about how to facilitate a good conversation, but what about the content of those conversations?
Yes, good point.
This idea of transformation as linguistic from the Peter Block source really caught my eye.
Oh, yeah.
It's saying the stories we tell ourselves
Right.
have real power to change things.
Absolutely.
It's not just airy-fairy stuff.
No, it's not. Think about the shift from viewing addiction as a moral failing to seeing it as a chronic disease.
Oh, yeah.
This language change, it impacted treatment approaches, policy, community perception. That's the kind of power we're talking about.
It's like we're all walking around with these scripts in our heads, right? And they dictate how we see the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes those scripts are holding us back.
Oh, for sure.
Like you might tell yourself, I'm just one person, I can't change anything.
Right, right.
But if you shift that to, I can have a conversation that sparks an idea, suddenly you've got agency.
And that's especially true in communities.
Yeah.
A narrative of hopelessness
Ugh.
can make people feel like there's no point in trying to address substance misuse.
Right.
But if you start highlighting stories of recovery, resilience, individual acts of support,
Right.
it creates a new possibility.
And that's where peer-to-peer engagement comes in.
Right.
These sources suggest that real change often happens not from, experts lecturing, but from people sharing their lived experiences with each other.
Yes.
Those authentic connections
You're right.
can change hearts and minds
Totally.
in ways a top-down approach just can't.
Think about it. You're more likely to be receptive to a message
Yeah.
if it comes from someone you
Right.
trust and relate to.
Right.
And those peer-to-peer conversations can help break down stigma,
Right.
build empathy, and create a sense of shared responsibility for addressing substance misuse.
So what does all this mean for you as a prevention specialist? What are the key takeaways we're pulling from these sources so far?
Well, first, recognize that while it feels natural, good conversation is a skill. It's about facilitating, not dominating.
Okay.
Second, the way we talk about substance misuse, it matters.
Right.
Are we reinforcing old narratives or opening space for new ones? And finally, peer-to-peer connection, powerful.
Yeah.
How can you foster those authentic conversations in your community?
These are great points to keep in mind as we continue our deep dive. But before we move on, I want to hear what's standing out to you so far. What's resonating with your experience in the field?
What stands out to me is how much emphasis these sources place on self-awareness.
Oh, interesting.
Kahane, he talks about the importance of seeing yourself as part of the problem, which can be a tough pill to swallow at first.
I can see that. Yeah, no one likes to think they're contributing to the issue they're trying to solve. But Kahane isn't saying we're bad people, right? It's more about recognizing our blind spots, I think.
Precisely. We all have biases, assumptions, ways of seeing the world. That might be limiting our effectiveness.
Right.
As prevention specialists, we might think we're being objective.
Yeah.
But are we missing something because of our own background or experiences?
It makes me think of that as saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail,
That's a good one.
If we're not careful, we might try to apply the same solutions
Right.
to every community without really listening to what that specific community needs.
Yeah, and that's why it's so crucial to constantly be checking ourselves, asking questions like, am I truly listening to the community?
Yeah.
Or am I projecting my own ideas onto them? It's about humility and a willingness to learn from our mistakes.
This ties into another point from Kahane. If you're not part of the problem, you can't be part of the solution.
It is a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, it's a bit of a paradox, but the idea is that if we pretend to be totally neutral outsiders, we're not fully engaging.
It's like trying to fix a car engine without getting your hands dirty.
Yeah.
You might be able to diagnose the problem from a distance, but you'll never truly understand how it works unless you're willing to get in there and tinker with it.
Okay.
And you might even discover a better solution than you originally imagined.
So it's about recognizing that we're all part of the system.
Exactly.
And that we all have a role to play in creating change.
That's right.
And sometimes that means acknowledging that we might be part of the problem, even unintentionally.
And that recognition can be incredibly empowering
Go ahead.
because once we own our role in the system, we can start to act more intentionally. We can start to identify those leverage points where we can make a real difference.
So how do we actually put this into practice? How can we start to see ourselves as part of the system? And how can we use that awareness to be more effective prevention specialists?
Well, it starts with self-reflection. Taking the time to honestly examine our own biases, our own assumptions, and the ways in which we might be contributing to the problem.
Yeah.
And it also involves being open to feedback from others, particularly from members of the community we're working with.
Because they might see things that we don't.
Yeah.
Right. They might have insights into the dynamics of the community that we're blind to.
Yeah.
And by being willing to listen to their perspectives, we can start to see the situation more clearly and to develop more effective, sustainable solutions.
This ties back to the concept of shared responsibility
Right.
that we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Substance misuse, it isn't just the responsibility of the prevention specialist to solve. It's a community issue
Right.
that requires a community response.
And that means creating a space where everyone feels empowered to contribute, right?
Yes.
Where everyone's voice is valued and where everyone feels a sense of ownership over the solutions.
It's about shifting
Yeah.
from a top-down approach
Yeah.
to a more collaborative and participatory model. And it's about recognizing that we all have a role to play, even if it's, just having a conversation with a friend or family member or supporting a local initiative.
Now you mentioned earlier that these sources have some practical tips for structuring these kinds of conversations. I'm thinking about those microstructures again. Is there another example besides the 1, 2, 4 all that might be helpful for our listener?
Absolutely. The training materials highlight another framework called What? So What? Now What?
Interesting. Okay.
It's a simple but incredibly powerful tool.
Okay.
For guiding discussions in a way that moves people from observation to understanding to action.
I love a good framework. Break it down for us.
Okay.
How would you use this in a substance misuse prevention context?
Let's say you're facilitating a community meeting about underage drinking. You could start by asking what?
Okay.
To gather information. What are the current trends? What are people noticing in their neighborhoods?
Okay. So you're getting everyone on the same page. Making sure you're all looking at the same picture, but it's just facts and figures at this point, right?
Right. Then you move to so what?
Okay.
Now you're analyzing that information.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? What are the root causes? Is it lack of parental supervision, peer pressure, easy access to alcohol?
So this is where you're starting to get some deeper understanding.
Exactly.
Connecting the dots between the observations and the potential underlying issues.
Exactly. And finally you ask, now what? This is the action planning stage. What can we do about it? What strategies might be effective? Who needs to be involved?
I love how this framework keeps the conversation moving forward.
Yes.
It's not just about venting or complaining. It's about brainstorming solutions and identifying concrete steps that the community can take.
And it's a framework that you can use in all sorts of settings, from small group discussions to large community forums.
Right.
It's versatile and adaptable, which is essential when you're dealing with a complex issue,
Right.
like substance misuse prevention.
Okay. So we've got these great tools for facilitating conversations, but we also need to be mindful of the content of those conversations. Right? We were talking about narratives.
Yes.
And how the stories we tell ourselves can either help or hinder our efforts to create change.
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful narratives we can shift is the one that focuses on individual responsibility versus systemic factors.
Okay.
Too often we frame substance misuse as a personal failing,
Yeah.
ignoring the broader social and economic conditions
Right.
that contribute to the problem.
It's like blaming someone for drowning when they were thrown into the ocean with no life jacket.
That's a good analogy.
Yes, they might have made some poor choices, but the context they were in
Right.
made those choices much more likely.
Exactly. And as prevention specialists, we need to be mindful of the language we use.
Yeah.
Are we reinforcing those narratives of blame and shame? Or are we highlighting the systemic factors that contribute to substance misuse?
This goes back to Kahane's idea of being part of the problem.
It does.
Are we unintentionally perpetuating stigma by focusing solely on individual choices without acknowledging the impact of poverty, trauma, lack of access to health care, and other social determinants of health?
These are tough questions, but they're essential to ask. If we want to create truly transformative change, it's about shifting our perspective from what's wrong with you to what happened to you.
And that shift in perspective can make all the difference in how we approach prevention, treatment, and recovery.